appreciate it. We like the opportunity to be able to educate and help others to understand what hospice really is and what it can help you do and be part of your life in a way that you want it to be. So as you can see, we're the Care Team Home Health and Hospice. That's our company. We service pretty much 98% of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. We do have some offshoots in other states too, but we are able to help you not just necessarily in this West Michigan area, if this is where you're at, but also the east side of the state, up north. You can talk to us about all of those areas as well. So, and I'm sorry about the cat. I apologize in advance if you can hear her, crying in the background. Again, this is me. I'm Valerie Cook. I'm the patient care liaison. So that basically means, I like to call it, I bridge the gap between the healthcare community and healthcare services and families. And so I help to make that happen, get services provided on our home health and hospice team, but I specifically focus on hospice and then how to get to the family and what we can do to help them. And then Dan can introduce himself.
Yeah, well, like she said, my name's Dan, the hospice nurse for the Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo area. I've been doing nursing for quite a while. Worked in a lot of wound care clinics, ER, skilled nursing facilities, even the Department of Corrections, home care. Absolutely love my job now. Can't imagine ever doing anything else. So, yeah, that's pretty much
awesome. And he won't toot his own horn, so I will. I know that it takes a special kind of nurse to be able to be a hospice nurse, let alone everywhere I go, everybody wants to have Dan as their nurse. So he is phenomenal and loves what he does. And as you can see, I'm not going to read it for you, the About Us section. It's really the care team and what we provide and what we truly treat hospice as. So we'll be able to share this PowerPoint with you once the presentation is over. Chris said she will send that out. So just so you're aware, if you want this information to you, you will get it if you're in here. So, and then I'm going to let Dan, who is the clinician, provide you with more specifics on the hospice care itself. I'm the one who, again, bridges the gap between families and the clinicians to make sure they get what they want, but might as well let the professional who knows what he's talking about actually do this part. So Dan, if you want to take away.
All right. Going over the different things of, who's going to be appropriate for hospice. The one thing that's what I seem to find a lot is the apprehension about actually coming into hospice. But like, I'll just going through the list here, diagnosis of a life-limiting condition, frequent admissions to the hospital, weight loss, all these different things that seem to happen continually to somebody. And there's a point where you just kind of just want to be done. There is a whole nother avenue to be able to take to be able to have the peace of mind and just the battles of the hospital visits and all that. But we have when you're starting to fail with your activities of daily living, you're bathing, you're dressing, walking, going to the bathroom, different things like that, recurrent infections. These are all real specific things that after a time can get pretty hard to deal with. You can continually go on and try to take care of those things, but there's a point in time where you just don't want to do that anymore. And then that's where we'll come into play and start to work with you.
Right. Basically, I would say, and it's kind of what Chris said about her dad, it's kind of like when you get stuck in this circle of constantly trying to fix the problem, but fixing the problem is more exhaustive than actually fixing the problem, that you just want quality of life and not feel that you have to constantly go to the hospital, come home, rehab, like whatever that looks like. I think that's a really good way to sum it up too.
Absolutely. Well, here's just a list of some of the things that are diagnosable for hospice. Obviously, the big thing that's been the last couple of years, COVID, and HIV, cancer, strokes, heart disease. I mean, we can just go on through the list. Dementia, Parkinson's, all these things are things that are diagnosable for hospice. And again, we take the diagnosis, the disease, and we treat it differently than the curative side, because we want comfort, we want peace of mind. Those kind of things go into every one of these diagnoses. We want to make sure that when you come on to hospice, or you're thinking about hospice, that one of these things that comes into your life, that there is a solution or something that will help you with these things, at the end, for sure.
Can you talk to them a little bit more? The reason why I put an asterisk next to cancer is there's like it's kind of a gray area with cancer.
With cancer, obviously that's a big one, but like, you've gone through the radiation, you've gone through the chemo, and it's just, as anybody that's gone through that knows, that's really harsh. Mm-hmm. And the cancer could go in submission for a bit, but then come back. You're pretty much, you can go through that all over again, but you would be that you could go into hospice with the cancer. Obviously, there's some that are in remission that are no longer, you can no longer qualify for hospice, right, if something like that takes place. Is that what you were asking about?
Yeah, basically it's a gray area where like you can go into hospice if you want to stay home or stay where you're at, be comfortable and not deal with like the radiation and the treatment, because we all know, I'm sure all of us here know how exhaustive and traumatic that experience is. But if you have the fighting chance to do so, then do it. But if at some point in time, if you have cancer and you're like, what, I just want to be comfortable, I want to be at home, I don't want to have to fight these things. So I know that there's like, it's kind of like a gray area. So like cancer, you can either fight it or try and fight it, or you can be comfortable and not take on that fight of radiation and chemo and whatever that looks like. And so that's where hospice can come into play. But I think there's more to like if they've said, what, maybe there isn't any treatment, that's when you can call us too, to help with pain management and all of those things. So.
Yeah, well, sometimes the treatment is more harmful than the disease. And that's where the focus towards hospice normally comes into play more.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, next slide.
Here's the big question right here. Why hospice and why now? And like we were just talking about the cancer, when the curative treatments are no longer working, you just don't want to continue that, because the curative side can actually be more harmful than the actual disease itself. And curative treatments at the hospital, oh my goodness, I've seen this so often where it's so taxing on the person, mentally and physically. And more than likely, depending on the disease, you're going to be going back and back and back again to the hospital, and you get it fixed, and then by golly, just not much time goes on and it happens again, and you're right back in square one. And it's so hard on people. And again, hospice is a respite, is a place of rest where you can actually come in and have peace. I mean, that's where the word hospice comes from originally, place of shelter. And that's what we want, especially in our last hours of life, whether it be 6 months, a year, whatever the case is. That's the time where we really just need to have peace.
Absolutely.
And the difficult question is, should families forego treatment in the hospital and opt for comfort care? You know, I mean, that's everything we were just talking about comes to this. So when do we do it, you know? And again, do the cures side, you know, is it worse to go that route than the actual disease itself? You can go on to the next slide.
Okay.
What we were just talking about, the hospitals they'll go through a lot to try to treat infections. So there's labs, there's MRIs, CAT scans, multiple doctor's appointments, so many different things that you have to go through. And again, we're trying to avoid at this time of life, avoid the stress and discomfort. Especially you're already dealing with the illness that's pretty profound. Then you've got all these other things that you have to remember, all the multiple appointments that there are. And again, peace, pain-free, all these things are really, really important at this stage of life. Here we go with some of the things that help with the comfort and the dignity. We work on trying to decrease the anxiety, your depression, which we know those two, the anxiety and depression, those two alone can actually increase a lot of the signs and symptoms of your other diseases. So we really work hard on those. And of course, pain. Pain is the one thing most people are scared of, and for a good cause. And so we work really hard to make sure that there is a pain level. Our goal obviously is to be pain-free, but we try to get down to a manageable level. Grief, and it's not just for the patient. Here we're talking about the entire family.
Yeah.
That your spouse, your children, your brothers and sisters, mom and dads, all those. So when we go into this hospice realm, we're not just dealing with the nurse. We have the chaplains, we have the social workers, we have the aides, we have the volunteers. We just have so many different things that we can offer to help with those different situations. Again, it's easy to be depressed and have all this anxiety and all this stuff without the proper treatment. Because on the curative side, they're working towards trying to fix the problem, where we're going to be dealing more with the symptoms that come at us, and we will work aggressively at those. We're not going to let somebody be in pain. I've heard from time to time that they're in hospice. What difference does it make? It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. This time of life, we want to be comfortable in all the aspects of mentally and physically. And this is basically the group of everybody that's involved that does it. We have our attending physician. We have, like me, the registered nurse. There are LPNs. We have social workers, CNAs that come in. They do the showers. They a lot of times just visit, which is so important, because a lot of people just don't have family all the time around you all the time. And all these extra little things that help just visiting, it's amazing. The chaplains, we have grief counselors for even after your loved one passes, that we have grief counselors that stick with you for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And of course our volunteers, which are incredible people.
So that's a whole lot of information in a really short period of time, but there's a couple of things I wanted to hit on too that Dan mentioned. So yes, we have a huge team of people. We also have volunteer services that don't necessarily come to you, but like we have a pen pal program, we have a blanket making fidget program, we have all of these different things that you can be involved in if you'd like as a hospice volunteer as well right now. So you can see it. But yeah, like he said, grief counseling too. The grief counseling, I've heard of it being up until 18 months after your loved one passes away. It's wherever you feel you're okay. And that's the whole family unit, right? There's a myth and a misconception that hospice is means that, well, you're dying then. Well, not necessarily as quickly as that, right? But there's so much time spent on how you come into the world. There should be as much time spent on how you leave this world, right? We want you to be comfortable. We want you to be awake. We want you. So a lot of people think we give you as much medication as we can to not make it so you know what's going on in the world. Well, that's not true at all. We make you comfortable, but we want you to be able to interact and get up and walk around if you can, talk to your family, cook dinner if you physically can, like still be you, but be comfortable. And I think that's really a misconception that people get. I'm going to look at the Q&A here really quick. How do patients and doctors decide what meds are offered for pain or meds for patients who want to give up living? That's an interesting one. That's you, Dan.
Well, it goes on, pretty much goes individual by individual. We're definitely not going to, like morphine is probably the most common that everybody knows about. The thing I hear probably the most is that, boy, my loved one was doing fine, and then they started morphine and they died shortly after. The truth of the matter is the person was getting down to the point, and we caught them with the morphine to help them. You know, it's a total different way of looking at it. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, the nurses, the chaplains, and the social workers, and the aides, everybody involved, when we talk to the person, we can kind of feel it out on how they're doing. And I'll report to the doctor. We have our interdisciplinary meetings, and also on a daily basis, where we'll give the signs and symptoms to the doc, and we will order medications at that time, whether it be for Ativan for anxiety, or morphine for pain. It doesn't have to be morphine. It could be Tylenol, if that's enough to work. If you have an infection, urinary tract infection or pneumonia, we don't go through all the lab works of getting those tested. We'll treat it as though that's what the case was. Is that pretty much the question there?
Yeah, I think basically what it was getting at was like how do they decide them? And meds for patients who want to give up living, like that to me, and Joan, you can correct me if you want, is like we don't give medications to increase the ability for the patient to pass away if they choose to want to pass away sooner rather than later. We can't legally do that in the state of Michigan. But I know that becomes something that people have been talking about. I'm aware. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in that particular case, no, we don't prescribe medicines to try to help somebody pass sooner. We do help with the pain and the mentally and physically issues that's going on. We will help you with that. Right down to if it's oxygen needed. Some people just don't want oxygen. And that's totally fine. I get it. I mean, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. Same thing with pain medications. Some people can bear the pain and they just don't want anything. And if they feel like oxygen, oh, it's going to make me live longer. Nah, not really. I mean, that's not the purpose isn't to do that as much as it's to make you feel comfortable. It's going to ease your breathing. It's going to put less stress on the heart because that heart's not having to work so hard to pump oxygen through your body. So you have you've got those things, but to give medications to help somebody pass sooner, no, we don't do that here in the state of Michigan.
No, this is a really good question. I'll answer this one. Having a father and father-in-law who both were on hospice with cancer, it seemed the doctors waited too long to recommend hospice. Both spent months in pain before hospice and only days with hospice and pain treatment. Options for how to bring this up with your doctor. That's a really interesting question, and I really appreciate it actually, because it gives me an opportunity to talk to that, because that is actually something that as a family member, you can advocate for your family member. But here's the other idea. This is the way I recommend doing it, because most doctors live in the world that Dan is speaking about. When you go to the hospital, they're trying to save you, right? We're going for treatment. We're going to figure out how to make it better, right? That's what we want to do. So I'm not saying this is not a general overview of all doctors. I cannot say that. I love doctors. I work very, very closely with a lot of them. But it's an uncomfortable topic for them as well, because they're trained to save you. Do whatever that means and whatever they can do. I would recommend calling whatever hospice you prefer, if that's us, if that's another one in the community, and telling them that you're interested in getting your loved one evaluated and possibly admitted for hospice. And then someone like myself then braces that conversation with your doctor. You then don't have to. So if that makes sense, then it becomes something that I'm responsible for doing, not you, which can make it easier, right? So that's just one avenue, or you can just bring it up with your doctor at any point in time. You pay your doctor's medical bills, so you're free to bring up what you think would be beneficial for your family member, or your family member can if they still advocate for themselves. Places to have hospice, we didn't cover that, but you can have hospice anywhere. Home, in a community, in a facility, wherever you find home to be, you can be put on hospice and have it at that place. So is it at your daughter's house, your nephew's house, your house, wherever you feel the most comfortable. And Dan can tell you how often he probably sees a patient, which is probably the best part about us, and how often you're probably visited. I can't quote this, but Dan would be able to. I think you get to see somebody from our team at least once or every other day a week.
Well,
am I wrong?
It varies, depending on the person's needs too. Normally, I go out, and in the beginning anyway, twice a week. We have the home health care aide, the CNA, that goes out twice a week. The chaplains and the social workers, again, depending on the individual, weekly to bi-weekly. That's kind of the normal. Volunteers are as needed. But as time progresses and you get closer and closer to passing, my visits increase to where near the end, I'm there every day. We normally have the aide go out more often through the week, just for bed baths normally by this time, and just to kind of help the patient be comfortable. We monitor very, very closely, and we are 24-hour facility. So we are on call all the time. So it doesn't matter if it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. If you're needed, we'll be there. And that's really huge, especially near the end, that there's always going to be somebody there.
Yeah. And that's super important, because lately I've been running into more people without families. So we are your support system in that instance. Do you know off the top of your head? I think I know, but I think you'd be better at answering this. How long on average is a person signed up on hospice?
Oh, again, that varies so much.
Does, I know.
Yeah, I've had some for a year and a half. I've had some for a couple of weeks. So it's just everywhere in the middle there, depending on what their disease is, what state they're in. And again, and how do I know when somebody is starting to really decline? It's pretty much by going in and doing my assessments and just looking for the signs of, decrease in appetite, decrease in wanting to drink, just not wanting the medications anymore, uncomfortable, just different things like that. Sleeping more, that's huge, because at the end you're just sleeping all the time, which is totally fine. And I really keep in close contact with the families, normally calling somebody after every visit, or whatever, they feel comfortable with. And always try to make sure if the family's wishes, especially the patient's wishes, are that the family's there, that I work really hard to make sure that if the patient's in a facility, that we have enough signs and symptoms that I can call the family to let them know, hey, let's all get together. And now is the time for that. So it's really hard. I wish I had that crystal ball to be able to look at and go, okay, this is going to be your hour, but we don't. And even sometimes the signs and symptoms that are textbook of it's time for this person to pass, yeah, they fool us a lot, because it just doesn't always work textbook.
Well, and I think you can probably agree to this, is that I think the majority, I would say majority of people don't sign on as soon as they should to benefit from the usefulness of hospice. I've seen it more time and time again where people sign up so late, like the question I received earlier about how do you advocate to your doctor because unfortunately their family member suffered through some pain and things like that they didn't need to. If you think that on the horizon you may need hospice services, you can actually start looking at them sooner rather than later. Doesn't mean you need to have your family member sign on right now, but there are always times to, I say, investigate and look at and talk to hospices to find out who aligns with your beliefs the best. Some are faith-based, some are all about location-based. It's really up to you to find out what you as a family and as the person, right? You get to decide how this goes too. Sometimes before you get to that point, you can research them and find out which one you think is the best. I will say, and Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, but we are dictated to by Medicare on what we have to provide, right? There are certain things that we are required to do because we are a hospice service and we are licensed. So everyone is going to have basically the same structure, but there's different things that add in, like their volunteer support services, those types of things, massage therapy, pet therapy, like those different extras. But really, the idea is who fits best with what you as a family and as a person are looking for in hospice. Not everybody is going to fit the same way with each individual hospice, and some people may have had a good or a bad experience with one that's local and might want to go or not go with them. So I encourage everybody to look before the need arises, so you're not scrambling at the last minute, or you at least understand who's out there when the decision comes to you and you say, yeah, this is who I want, or I'm interested in talking to this one. I always say more information is better armed and dangerous, so that you're not scrambling at the last minute or just thrown on one and you don't know who they are. Education is best, right? Is there any other questions that we can address or any concerns?